Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Akram and you're watching Knowledge 360. In the previous video, we discussed about logical operators in PostgreSQL, and in this video, we'll discuss about comparison functions and operators in PostgreSQL. So comparison operators are used to compare values of the same or related data types, and they return a Boolean result that is true, false, or null. There are some basic comparison operators such as less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and not equal. So let's see with example. We are creating one table called employees and we are inserting some data into the employees table. So the data setup is completed. First, we will see an example of greater than. So here we are taking the employee details whose salary is greater than 50,000. So let's select the data and see. So here we can see that we got two employees, Bob and David, whose salary is more than 50,000. Similarly, now let's see another example of less than or equal to operator. So in this case, we are comparing the value with 50,000. So that means if the salary is equal to 50,000 or less than 50,000, those employees detail will be returned. So let's query this. So here we can see that we have two employees with satisfying this condition. Now let's see another example of not equals to. So in this case we are comparing the name, that is name is not equal to Alice. So we can get the employee detail whose name is not Alice. So here is the output. So we got three employees because one employee name is Alice, that is not written here. Now let's see between and not between. The between predicate checks if a value lies within a range or not. So in this case, when we write between value range, lower range and the upper range. So in this case, both the lower range value and upper range value, they are both are inclusive. So that means if we write salary between 45,000 and 60,000, so that means salary should be greater than equal to 45,000 or less than equal to 60,000. So let's query this and see the output if it is returned or not. So here we found that we have three employees with this salary range whose salary is more than 45,000 or equal to 45,000 and less than equal to 60,000. Similarly, we have not between as well. So not between works exactly opposite as between. So it will check if the salary doesn't lie within this range. That means the salary should be less than 45,000 or greater than 60,000, not within that range. So let's query this and see if there is any such employee. So we got one employee, that is David, whose salary is 70,000. So that means this salary is out of this range. Now let's see symmetric keyword. Between symmetric allows swapping of range values. So if you notice that whenever we write between like this, first we mention the lower range. Lower range can be 10 and we write the upper range. It can be like 25 for example. So but what will happen if we swap this value 25 and if we make 10? So it will not work. So this is how between works. But if we add the symmetric keyword with that, so it should work. So let's see the example. Here we are selecting select 2 between 3 and 1. So it will give me false because the first value is upper value and the second value is the lower value. So it will return me false. So it return false. But for the same range, if we use the symmetric keyword, it should return true because the swapping is allowed. So let's query this. So here we can see that when we use the between symmetric, it return true. Now let's see is distinct from, is not distinct from. So these are used for null safe comparisons. So what is null safe comparison? So in this case, let's see if we are selecting 1. So 1 is distinct from null, true, because this value is not null. So this is clearly defined. So we can see that it will return true. So it return true. But if we select null is distinct from null, no, this is false because this is not distinct from null. This is itself null. So it will return me false. So this return false. So similarly we have not distinct. This was distinct from, is distinct from, and we also have is not distinct from. Is not distinct from also works similar. Now let's see is null and is not null. They are used to check if a value is null or not. So first we'll see an example of is null. So in this case we are checking employees if someone having salary as null. So let's query and see if there is any employee. So we returned no record. So that means there is no such employee whose salary is null. Now let's see an example of is not null example. So in this case we are checking if the salary is not null. So salary can be 0, salary can be anything but not blank or null. So let's query this. So here we found that all the 4 employees having salary values. To check is null or is not null, there is another way, but it is non-standard, but it is supported. So we can check like this: salary is null. So let's query if salary is null. So we know there is no employee with salary null. Similarly, we can check for salary not null. So let's query and we should get all the employees because we know for all the employees we have salary values. Now let's see Boolean test. You can check Boolean expression explicitly like is true, is not true, is false, is not false, and so on. So for example, if we select true is true, that is correct. So it should return true value. It return true. Similarly, if we select null is true as Boolean value, it should return false because we know null is an unknown value and it is not true. Similarly, we can query for others as well. It works on Boolean expressions. Now let's see row wise null checks. So when checking entire rows, we can detect all null rows or not. So in this case, select null 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 is null, that should return true. That means all the parameters that written here. So is there all the values are null or not? So let's see, it should return true. So it returned true. So similarly, we can select detecting all non null values or not. So in this case we are checking row 1 test 3.5 is not null, so that is true because all the values are not null, so it returned true. And what happens when we have provided mixed null and non-null fields? So in this case, first example, we have one null and one value and then hello. So is null, that means if all the values are null, so no, it should return false, so it return false. And similarly, if we are selecting the same thing and we are checking is not null, that means we are checking if all the values are not null, so that is also not true because we have one null value, so it will also return false. Now let's see comparison functions. So PostgreSQL also provides useful functions for comparison. We have one function num non-nulls function. It returns the number of non-null arguments. So in this case we have written this function and we can provide as many parameters into this function. So we have provided in this case how many non-null values are there, 1, 2 and then 3. So 3 non-null value we have provided. So the output should be 3. So here we can see the output is 3. Similarly we have another function. Num nulls. So it returns the number of null arguments. So we have same list of parameters but the function is num nulls. It will count the null values. So in this case we have two null values. So let's query this. So it returned true. So it is useful in finding the number of null values. So the conclusion is comparison operator like less than, greater than, equal to, less than, equal to, not equal to, etc. compare values and return Boolean results. Between and not between check ranges, but if we use symmetric keyword, it ensures range order doesn't matter. Is distinct from is the null safe comparison. Is null or is not null check for nulls, and Boolean tests such as is true, is false, etc. give more explicit checks. So this was all about comparison functions and operators in PostgreSQL. So if the video was helpful, do like the video and subscribe the channel to get the notifications for upcoming videos. In the next video, we'll discuss about mathematical functions and operators in PostgreSQL. So let's meet in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.